40 hours, March 7th, 1945. The forested hills east of the Rhine, overlooking the town of Remagen. Master Sergeant Elias Thorne, 291st Engineer Combat Battalion, does not look at the town. He does not listen to the sound of American tanks from the 9th Armored Division crashing through the trees behind him. He squints at the river, the Rhine. It is 1,000 feet wide, a slate-grey, fast-moving muscle of water. Through his binoculars, he sees it, the Ludendorff Bridge, a black steel lattice stretching across the water, defiant and impossible. It is still standing. A lieutenant, young and breathless, scrambles up the ridge. "Thorne, they're saying the bridge is wired. We're flanking south. Orders are to prep for an assault crossing." Thorne nods, but his eyes remain fixed on the steel. He is a carpenter from Oregon, a man who built bridges over wild rivers that would swallow equipment whole. He understands wood, steel, and current. The German army has been meticulous. They have blown every bridge over the Rhine, except this one. The air is cold, smelling of pine and diesel fumes. He pulls a worn leather notebook from his breast pocket, flipping past complex diagrams of pontoon systems and stress calculations. He finds a blank page and draws the bridge, his pencil scratching hard. He notes the two main towers, the long, arched truss. He is an engineer. He sees a problem. The report said the Allies would be forced to pause at the Rhine, regrouping for a bloody assault crossing that could cost $50,000 lives. Yet the bridge stands. He looks at the swirling heavy water and back to the bridge. He is not a combat soldier, but he knows a trap, 1,000 feet of steel waiting to collapse, or a miracle. The silence is broken by the crackle of a radio and then a new sound. American machine gun fire close, down at the river's edge. "They're going for it," the lieutenant whispers, awestruck. Thorne watches as tiny figures, men from Company A of the 27th Armored Infantry, sprint from the town and onto the bridge's western ramp. It is a suicidal gesture. A single man should be able to detonate the charges. Thorne holds his breath. He is waiting for the explosion, the flash of yellow-white light, the roar that will signal the end of the bridge and the start of his own hard work. But the explosion never comes. Instead, there are smaller pops, rifle fire. The men keep running. Thorne's mind, a carpenter's mind, disconnects from the battle and engages with the physics. He is thinking about the current, 5 knots. He is thinking about the riverbed, how much scour it must have. He is thinking about the M2 treadway system, the new, untested floating bridge he has been studying, the one his superiors call Thorne's folly. He is staring at the Ludendorff, but he is already designing its replacement. The High Command is electrified by the news. We have a bridge, a bridgehead, a direct, unexpected path into the heart of Germany. But Master Sergeant Thorne is in the command tent, pointing at the schematics of the 1916 railway bridge. "Sir, it's damaged. We don't know why the charges failed, but the structure is compromised. It was built for trains, not a column of 34-ton Shermans." The officers see a victory. Thorne sees a 1,000-foot bottleneck vibrating under stresses it was never meant to bear. The real battle, he knows, is not taking the bridge. It is holding the bridgehead. And for that, they need more than one damaged, vibrating pre-World War I railway bridge. They need new bridges. What he didn't know was that his obsession with a floating road of steel mesh would be the only thing that saved the miracle at Remagen. The Rhine is not merely a river, it is the defining psychological and geographic barrier of Western Europe. For centuries, it has been Germany's moat, its Festung Rhine. In 1945, Allied High Command understands this. Field reports from Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, or SHEF, are blunt. An amphibious assault crossing, even with overwhelming air support, is projected to be the costliest operation of the European theatre. The river itself presents a formidable engineering challenge. At the Remagen sector, the water is over 1,000 feet wide, flowing at a treacherous 8 to 10 knots. The riverbanks are soft, alluvial mud, incapable of supporting the heavy cranes and anchoring systems required for traditional military bridging. German High Command, OKW, has issued standing orders. Every bridge on the Rhine is to be destroyed. The scorched earth policy is absolute. From the Swiss border to the Netherlands, demolition teams are methodical. As Allied forces approach, the great bridges at Wesel, Cologne and Bonn vanish in plumes of smoke and steel. The Allied plan, Operation Plunder, is a massive set-piece operation scheduled for late March, involving millions of men, specialized amphibious vehicles, and a staggering airborne component. It is expected to be a meat grinder. The Ludendorff Bridge, standing intact on March 7th, is not just a tactical surprise, it is a strategic impossibility that invalidates every assumption. But the bridge itself is a trap. A War Office analysis of the structure, based on pre-war records, highlights its age and specific design. Built in 1916 for railway traffic, its load-bearing capacity is concentrated on 2 sets of tracks. It is not designed for the distributed, vibrating weight of a non-stop column of trucks, tanks, and half-tracks. Field reports from the 291st Engineers, the first on the scene, are grim. The failed German demolition charges, though insufficient to drop the bridge, have warped key structural members. The concrete piers are cracked. The wooden railway ties that form the road are splintering under the treads of M4 Shermans, forcing engineers to plank the entire 100-foot span by hand while under artillery fire. The bridge is a bottleneck. It is the only artery feeding the nascent bridgehead on the eastern bank. The 9th, 78th and 99th Infantry Divisions are pushing across, creating a target-rich environment. But their supply line is a single, fragile, vibrating steel thread. The German response is furious. They understand the threat. They begin to throw everything they have at the bridge. Long-range 11-inch railway guns, V-2 rockets, and for the first time in history, jet bombers. The Arado R-234, faster than any Allied prop fighter, begins high-altitude runs, dropping 100-pound bombs. The bridge is a magnet for steel. The human cost is immediate. The men of the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion work on the bridge deck 24 hours a day in shifts. They are plugging holes, reinforcing warped steel, and replacing shattered planks. They do this while 155 German shells fired from the hills beyond scream in. They are exhausted, cold, and exposed. The vibration of the bridge is constant, a low, thrumming hum of metal fatigue that travels from the soles of their boots into their bones. Morale is stretched as thin as the steel girders. Every engineer working on that span knows, with absolute certainty, that it is not a question of if the bridge will fail, but when. The experts at 1st Army Headquarters are in agreement. A stable, heavy-tonnage bridge cannot be built across a river this fast, this wide, and under this much direct, accurate fire. It couldn't be done. Elias Thorne is 38 years old. He is from Astoria, Oregon. where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. He is not an academic engineer. He never attended West Point or MIT. He is a master carpenter and a logging bridgewright, a man who spent the Great Depression building high lead trestles over canyons in the Cascade Mountains. He understands the physics of timber, the tensile strength of steel cable, and the complex, brutal personality of a river at flood stage. He joined the Army Corps of Engineers because he was told he could build things, and he has spent 3 years building things that get blown up. He is a quiet, intense man. His men call him Eli the Mad, a nickname born of respect and mild terror. He carries a carpenter's pencil, a slide rule, and a notebook filled with precise, dense calculations. He sees the world in terms of load, stress, and shear. While other officers see a military map, Thorne sees a topographic survey. He is a pragmatist. He is obsessed with finding the fastest solution, not the best one. His core belief, honed in the Oregon wilderness, is that nature and war respect speed, not perfection. This pragmatic streak has put him at odds with the Army's doctrine. He has seen the standard military bridges, the heavy pontons, and the intricate Bailey systems. The Bailey is a marvel of engineering, a Lego set of steel trusses, but Thorne sees its weakness. Too many parts, he mutters to his platoon. Takes 1,000 men a week to build. We got hours. His context is not the training field in England, it is the collapsing bridge at Remagen. He has been shaped by a world where a bridge must be built in a single tidal cycle, or the logs are lost. He's uniquely prepared for this impossible problem. His obsession has found a focus. Back in a depot in France, he had seen components for the new M2 treadway bridge. It was ugly, light, and looked dangerously flimsy. It was a floating bridge, but instead of a solid wooden deck, it used 2 parallel steel mesh ladders. The treadways laid over 18-ton steel pontoon boats. It was designed by the Bureau of Yards and Docks for the Navy to be light enough to be airdropped, fast enough to be deployed in a single night. The Army engineers hated it. It was too light. The pontoons were unstable in a current, and it was rated for only 25 tons. It was a jeep bridge. But Thorne saw its genius. He saw the speed. The idea crystallizes for Thorne on the night of March 8th. The Ludendorff is closed for repairs. A German shell has punched a 30-foot hole in the deck. The bridgehead is cut off. Thorne finds his commanding officer, a major named Phelan, in a cellar command post, the maps illuminated by a single lantern. Thorne doesn't salute. He throws his notebook on the table. "We can't fix the railway bridge, sir. We're just patching it. We need the M2. Phelan, his face grey with exhaustion, looks up. "The M2? The treadway? Sergeant, I've seen the reports. It'll be torn apart by the current before we get the 4th pontoon in. First Army wants a heavy ponton bridge or a Bailey. That's the doctrine." "Doctrine's wrong, sir," Thorne says, his voice low. "The Bailey is too slow, too many parts. We'll be shelled to pieces before the first truss is locked. The heavy ponton is a barge. It'll spin in this water. The M2 is light, it's flexible. It doesn't fight the current, it rides it. We can pre-assemble the sections and float them into place." "It's a 25-ton bridge, Thorne. We need to move 34-ton Shermans. We need to move tank destroyers." "The rating is conservative," Thorne insists, his finger tapping the calculations in his notebook. "They rated it for a static load. This is a dynamic system. The current, the tension. It adds to the integrity. It's like a logging spar. It's stronger because it's flexible." Phelan stares at him. "You're telling me a bridge that looks like a high-wire act can hold a tank?" I'm telling you, it's the only bridge we can build, fast. And fast is the only thing that matters. Phelan rubs his eyes. He looks at the map, at the tiny, isolated red circle of the bridgehead. He looks at the casualty reports from the Ludendorff repair crews. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard," he says. He pauses, then signs a requisition form. "Get your M2 parts, and Sergeant, if you sink the first truck, I'll have you digging latrines in Belgium." Thorne nods, grabs the form, and vanishes into the night. The site is chosen, 500 yards downstream from the Ludendorff, in a slight bend of the river, partially shielded from direct observation by the smoke of the burning town. The 291st Engineer Combat Battalion, Company C, begins work at dawn on March 9th. The noise is a hellish symphony, the constant crump of incoming German artillery, the closer whoomp of their own anti-aircraft batteries firing at the Arado jets, and the scream of diesel engines from the DUKW amphibious trucks. Thorne finds an ally in Lieutenant John Jack Wolds. Wolds is 22, fresh from engineering school, and the only man in the battalion who has actually read the M2 Treadway instructional manual. He is the theory. Thorne is the practice. They stand on the bank, a river of mud, slick and freezing. The M2 components are stacked in disorganized piles, the 12-foot steel tread sections, the heavy pontoon boats, the saddles that connect them. The men are skeptical, cold, and terrified. They are building a bridge while being actively hunted. "We build it in sections," Thorne yells over the din, "not from the bank. We build the bays on the DUKWs, then float them. This is not in the manual." Wolds looks horrified. "Sergeant, the manual specifies a cable-anchored build-out from the near shore." "The manual was written on a lake in Virginia," Thorne shouts back. "We're on the Rhine. We use the current. DUKWs bring the sections. The river swings them into place. Now get those welders started." The men begin. They assemble the first bay, 2 pontoons, and the treadway section connecting them, on the relative safety of the shore, then lift it with a crane onto the back of a DUKW. The amphibious truck drives into the 100-foot river, its engine roaring against the current. The first attempt is a disaster. As the DUKW maneuvers the 15-ton bridge section, a shell from a German Nebelwerfer, a screaming Mimi, lands 50 yards upstream. The concussion is immense. It doesn't hit the DUKW, but the shockwave flips the pontoon bay. The steel section, 2 pontoons, and the 5-man crew vanish into the dark, freezing water. They are gone. The DUKW limps back to shore. The men on the bank stop. They look at Thorne. The project is dead. Thorne walks to the water's edge. He is covered in mud. He looks at the river, then at his men. He picks up a steel saddle. "The Germans know we're here," he says, his voice quiet but carrying. "That means we're doing it right. Get the next section. We're not losing this bridgehead." The breakthrough comes from this failure. He realizes they are too exposed. He orders the smoke generators to be brought right down to the riverbank, creating a dense, oily white fog that blankets the water. They will build it blind. For 36 hours they work. They cannot see the far bank. They cannot see the enemy. They can only hear the shells and feel the cold. They build by sound and by touch. A DUKW appears out of the smoke. A new section is welded in place, and the DUKW vanishes again. At 17:00 hours on March 11th, Lieutenant Wolds on the far bank connects the final section. It is done. 1,032 feet long, a floating ribbon of steel mesh, rising and falling on the violent current. It looks like a child's toy. Major Phelan arrives at the bank. He looks at the flimsy-looking structure. A single jeep tests it. It holds. Then a 5-ton truck. It holds. If stories like this fascinate you, stay with us. The next chapter of wartime innovation might surprise you. The moment of truth arrives with the rumble of tracks. A platoon from the 14th Tank Battalion, M4 Shermans, lines up at the entrance to the bridge. The lead tank commander, a sergeant, looks at the narrow steel treads and at Major Phelan. "Sir, are you sure?" Phelan turns to Thorne. "Sergeant, it's a 25-ton bridge. That is a 34-ton Sherman." Thorne ignores the major. He walks over to the tank commander. "Keep it in first gear. No stops. No slowing down. Maintain 100 feet between vehicles. You'll be fine." The tanker looks at him. "You built this?" "I did." "You going to stand on it?" Thorne nods. He grabs a wrench from his jeep and walks out to the center of the bridge. He stands on the small steel platform next to the treadway, 500 feet from shore, the Rhine swirling fast and dark beneath him. He can feel the entire structure vibrating, a living thing. He turns and signals to the tank. "Come on!" The tank, weighing 68 pounds, creeps onto the ramp. The first pontoons sink, the water rising, threatening to swamp the deck. The steel treads of the tank groan as they catch the mesh. The entire bridge sags, a low, terrifying U-shape. The men on the bank hold their breath. The tank moves 2 miles per hour, an agonizing crawl. Thorne doesn't move. He watches the pontoons, the way the water is displaced, the way the tension shifts from one bay to the next. The tank passes him, the commander giving a shaky salute. Thorne is soaked in the spray. The tank reaches the far bank and climbs the muddy exit ramp. A quiet cheer goes up from the engineers. Before it's over, Thorne turns and signals for the next one. This is the real test. Not a manual, not a calculation, but combat. For the next 72 hours, Thorne's mad bridge, the M2 treadway, becomes the primary artery for the First Army. The bridge is a scene of organized chaos. The clank, clank, clank of tank treads on the steel mesh is a deafening rhythmic percussion. The noise of engines is constant. Smoke pots work overtime, mixing with the diesel fumes to create a choking, impenetrable fog. The bridge is never empty, a constant 1,000-foot-long column of armor, fuel, ammunition, and men flows east. Field reports quantify the impact. In its first 24 hours of operation, the M2 treadway moves over 4 Zeros vehicles and 15 Zeros troops. Within 5 days, it has ferried the entirety of the 9th Armored, 78th Infantry and 99th Infantry Divisions, securing the bridgehead and allowing it to expand. Breaking out from the Rhine's cliffs, the German artillery, firing blind into the smoke, causes damage. Shells tear holes in the treadway, which Thorne's men patch, while tanks are still crossing. Pontoons are punctured. Thorne's crew simply unbolts the damaged bay, floats it away, and slots a new one in, like changing a tire. The ultimate proof comes at 15:00 hours on March 17th, 10 days after its capture. The Ludendorff Bridge, after a decade of non-stop use, pounded by artillery, bombed by jets and vibrating under the weight of an army, finally gives in. With a groan that is heard for miles, the main span collapses into the Rhine. It does not resist the stress. 28 American engineers patching its deck are lost. A silence falls over the river valley. But the silence is brief. The flow of armor and supplies does not stop. It simply diverts 500 yards downstream onto the floating, flexible, impossible bridge built by the Carpenter from Oregon. The Battle of Remagen is over. The miracle is complete. But the miracle was never the capture of the Ludendorff. That was luck. The miracle was the exploitation. It was the engineering feat that kept the bridgehead alive. General Eisenhower, upon hearing of the M2 treadway and a heavy-duty Bailey Bridge built alongside it by the 291st, states that the bridges are worth their weight in gold. The bridgehead at Remagen allows the First Army to pour into Germany's industrial heartland, shortening the war by months. The immediate outcome is a complete shift in military doctrine. The M2 treadway, the Jeep bridge that engineers had mocked, is proven to be the single most effective assault bridging system of the war. Its principles, modularity, speed, flexibility, and a design that rides the current instead of fighting it, become the cornerstone of all future military bridging. Its descendants, the Ribbon Bridge and the M3 amphibious rig, are still in use today, a direct technological line back to that muddy bank on the Rhine. Elias Thorn receives a Silver Star. The citation does not mention his calculations, his defiance of the manual, or his carpenter's intuition. It is for gallantry in action and disregard for personal safety, while maintaining his bridge under direct and continuous enemy fire. After the war, he is honorably discharged. He returns to Oregon. He builds logging bridges over the Wilson and the Trask rivers, bridges that must withstand the winter floods. He never talks about the Rhine. His name is never attached to the miracle at Remagen. He is a footnote in a battalion report, a mad carpenter who saw a river he knew he could cross. The DNA of Thorn's solution is everywhere. It is in the rapid deployment bridges used by FEMA to reach communities isolated by hurricanes. It is in the pontoon systems that cross floodplains. The core principle that good enough right now is infinitely better than perfect too late is a lesson that disaster response, military engineering, and even aerospace technology has had to learn and relearn. The barrier is rarely the technology. It is the imagination to use it. The Rhine was the last great physical barrier to the Allied advance, but the true barriers were psychological. They were the adherence to old manuals, the fear of the unorthodox, and the disbelief that a flimsy idea could solve a heavy problem. The Ludendorff Bridge, the monument of steel and stone, failed. The Treadway Bridge, a temporary, flexible, and humble solution, endured. The steel of the railway bridge is long gone, salvaged from the riverbed. But the fast-moving water, the water that demanded a new way of thinking, still flows. A silent witness to the moment, a carpenter's obsession proves stronger than a general's doctrine. Every great idea begins as an act of defiance against impossibility. What impossible ideas do you think could change the world?